Margo Gottlieb's passion has always been assessments in its many forms, starting with her dissertation, a K-12 multilingual test in Spanish, Lao, and English that integrated content and language. Since then, she was appointed to national and state advisory boards, served as a Fulbright senior scholar, and was honored by the TESOL International Association in 2016 for her significant contribution to the field. In her travels, Margo has enjoyed keynoting and presenting across the United States and in 25 countries. She has authored, co-authored, or co-edited over 100 publications, including 20 books and guides, and many of them are bestsellers. Andrea Honigsfeld is a professor in the School of Education at Malloy University in Rockville Center, New York. Before entering the field of teacher education, she taught in Hungary and in the New York City public school system. She also was the recipient of a doctoral fellowship at St. John's University in New York, where she conducted research on individualized instruction and learning styles. She has published extensively as well on working with English language learners and providing individualized instruction based on learning style preferences. She received a Fulbright Award to lecture in Iceland in the fall of 2002. And in the past 12 years, she has been presenting at conferences across the United States, Great Britain, Denmark, Sweden, the Philippines, and the UAE, and has many best-selling books as well. So without further ado, let's welcome Margo and Andrea for their webinar, Collaborative Assessment for Multilingual Learners and Teachers.
It's so nice to be with you today. Andrea and I have been waiting a long time and are very happy that you have joined us for this very special occasion. We really want to take you today on a very short collaborative assessment journey, because that's what we did in co-writing this book. Because we believe that assessment really can become powerful when you collaborate. And so we're going to walk you through some of those steps along the way, and we're going to be inclusive of our multilingual learners, because we need to give them agency, and our teachers. They are very special people. And so in our collaborative efforts, we really want to focus on those two very special groups of people. So we're going to highlight them along our journey. We also want you to underscore that collaboration couldn't happen with all the other educators who happen to help us along the way and have provided some of their own strategies, techniques, their successes in their collaborative travels. And so without further ado, we really want to share our appreciation for their efforts. And Andrea, take it away.
Sure. And most of all, we also want to give a huge shout out to Maria Duff. She's here on the call with us, and Claribel Gonzalez might be here with us too. I haven't had a chance to look at all the participants' names. Maria wrote the foreword to our book, and Claribel gave us her amazing illustrations that some of you might be familiar from previous books as well. And a huge shout out to the entire Corwin team for supporting this publication, which took, as you know, quite a few months, over a year from the moment that we first started thinking about this book. And as Margo mentioned, we have so many travel companions on this journey, or we have had them, and we continue to have them as partners, as collaborators in this work. Just a huge shout out to all of them on a single slide. If you recognize your name and you are here on this call, just please say hello in the chat, and please know how much we appreciate your support for your students and your support for this publication.
And your contribution, it is really going to make a difference. It amplifies the whole journey for us.
So I think intuitively, many of you already started doing this. I think we probably sent some vibes to you that this is what's coming. So many of you have already introduced yourselves in the chat box by location. Now, again, we would like to invite everybody to answer these two questions. Where in the world are you now? And where in the world would you like to go in the future? Because we're going to go through this journey theme throughout our presentation. So in the chat box, please respond like this: now, your current location, and future. So for me, it would be, I'm in Sunderland, Vermont, and future, one day I would really like to go to New Zealand and Australia, that part of the world I've never been to. How about you, Margo? What is your now and
Well, I am right now in Illinois, about to go to Florida via Pittsburgh. And gosh, I'd like to go anywhere. I just love the travel. I have the travel bug, always will, always, as Andrea has, and that kind of spurred this whole metaphor for us.
So we have so many answers coming in the chat box, where you are, where you're heading, or where you're dreaming to go in the future. I think many of us want to be world travelers and just be traveling all over the world. And again, we have lots of you from every part of the United States and internationally as well. So thank you so much for spending this hour with us.
And I see that some of you want to go back to your homeland. And that's a wonderful place to be.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you.
So Andrea and I have been collaborating. This isn't our very first effort. You can see that breaking down the wall, we actually joined together to write a chapter in, I think it was 2019. But first we had met through a Corwin conference where many of us gathered, and that was the foreword to this book. It really reiterated the strength that we had in seeking collaboration. And we have become a steadfast team at Corwin. All of us have continued to be very prolific writers, I would say. But Andrea and I, we have stuck together through the next 5 years. We each wrote a chapter for Breaking Down the Monolingual Wall, which came out last year. And you notice, if you look at the bottom, every single author is recognized. It isn't just one editor, but each of us. And so again, another very strong collaborative effort. I've had the honor of working with Andrea by providing forwards to a couple of her books. So it's been so much fun. So the collaboration did continue in Team Up, Speak Up, Fire Up, but her most recent book with Dr. Chance is collaboration and co-teaching in the dual language learners. And since I am such a strong advocate, I was very proud to be able to write that forward.
And I so appreciate this collaboration, and it's just going to continue. We're going to WIDA. Just a quick yes in the chat box if you're joining us at WIDA or La Cosecha. So we will be co-presenting at multiple conferences throughout the year. We hope to see you there in person as well.
Absolutely. So you see in our travels, we take selfies and there's Dr. Chance with us and Ivana Thrower. I bet many of you know her from North Carolina. Andrea and I spend special time together in restaurants, and here we are eating sushi in Milwaukee at WIDA's 10th, I believe, our 10th anniversary conference. We are at La Cosecha again with Joan and Claribel, having just a wonderful time. And here is an author team to launch Breaking Down the Monolingual Wall. And in the middle, that was our first Breaking Down the Wall. There we are in tandem, very happy to be together.
Yeah, so pretty much our story is a story of collaboration. And I just noticed in the chat box that Claribel is here with us. So
qué bueno. How nice.
So much. Thank you so much for being here. So we have some very ambitious outcomes for this webinar. We're hoping that after viewing this webinar, participating, if you are live with us today, you will have taken a brief virtual tour of our new book. You will have reflected on the norms for collaborative instruction and assessment, and you will develop increased awareness of multilingual learners and teachers as assessment collaborators. Yes, we're going to pack all of that into 1 hour or less. And equally, we have a fun agenda and we just formulated these key points a little bit differently. So we're inviting you to join us, collaborate with us as we explain the journey metaphor. Let's go on an adventure this evening. Let's peek into collaborative assessment as a structure, as a construct, and then let's leave time for Q&A as well.
So where are we going? And you might ask, well, where am I going? Well, come join us. You will see on the right-hand side that we use a set of icons that Claribel so beautifully illustrated, and it illuminates the steps of our journey. So you can see where we are, from preparing our journey to taking our journey to really reflecting on our journey. Because in an assessment as an instruction, we're going to begin with the end in mind. And so we deliberately take steps along the way and think about where we're going. And generally, we launch each chapter with a brief visit from a campus. In fact, it's a Katherine Johnson campus that consists of an elementary school, a middle school, and a high school. And we try to begin with some dialogic interaction between teachers and other educators in that complex, as well as giving a brief vignette of what can happen in this chapter as a phase within collaboration or a component of assessment. And so we're very deliberate in what we do as we share with you where we're going so you can join us in our travels. And there we are.
That was our only animation. Those of you who blinked, you missed it. But as you can see, we really wanted this journey to be joyful. So we have so much to celebrate, so much to appreciate about our collaboration and about everybody else's collaboration who contribute to this book. So we're very, very grateful. Here's the roadmap, because when you travel, you need a map of some sort, our table of contents. And as you could see that this is a relatively shorter, very, very user-friendly, teacher-friendly book in which we have chapter 1 just to set the parameters for the book. Chapter 2 introduces or reintroduces the collaborative instructional cycle, and we're aligning it to the collaborative assessment cycle. So we're introducing lots of new ideas and new ways of thinking about collaboration there. The next 3 chapters, again, might look familiar to some of you, as the constructs of assessment as for and of learning are reintroduced through the collaboration lens. And then we end the book in the final chapter to go beyond the classroom with our collaborative assessment practices. So we like to joke that once you get this book, you're going to read it in a day. You won't be able to put it down. You're just going to have to get all the way to the very end of this journey with us. But if you can finish it in a day, well, there is a roadmap that you can follow.
So how are you ever going to get there? Well, Andrea and I thought about this and came up with 7, what I would consider as guiding lights that really helped us along the way. So the first one is, and you might consider them principles, but we call them norms for collaboration, not only for assessment, but also instruction, because the two go hand in hand. You can't have one without the other. And they're totally interwoven. We are moving towards asset-based pedagogy in multilingual education. Por fin, as we say in Spanish, finally. We really are basing collaboration on the strengths of our students and their families. And we do that in culturally and linguistically responsive ways, bringing in the languages, the cultures, the traditions, the experiences, the interests of our students. They are up front always as we think about instruction and assessment in collaborative ways. We offer our students voice and choice. It's so important that as they gain confidence in learning, that they have choices along the way. And one of those choices is to use their multilingualism, to use translanguaging, to use their multiple languages, whether you are monolingual or a polyglot, that you are able to give the students those resources they need so you can build on their strengths. We acknowledge that there's learner variability. Every child, every learner, every student, every human is unique. And we need to really tap those unique qualities and take them into consideration in our collaborative effort. Family engagement is critical. We include families and their funds of knowledge as part of collaborative assessment. And finally, our ultimate norm, it's collaboration across the board amongst teachers and administrators, amongst teachers and their students and families. That's our watchword for our journey. So if you look on the right-hand side at the upper, we want you to chat. Which of these 7 norms would you prioritize in your work or are doing so right now? Just put it in the chat. You can just put a number from 1 to 7.
You could put more than one number, but so far,
Right, but one seems to take precedence. It's very interesting that we need to work on our students' strengths. That's where we begin our journey. Wonderful.
Gwen said 1 to 7, all of them. And Jennifer mentioned what she's currently working on. Thank you so much for sharing with us what you might be already prioritizing. So this could
Family
be
engagement seems to be an important norm as well. We can't forget our students' homes and the assets they bring from their home too.
Yeah, number 6 comes up a lot as well. Maria also says 1 to 7. Thank you, Denise, for identifying how you are working on advocating for your students. And Nancy also says all of them. Right. Thank you. Thank you for
Well,
sharing.
maybe you can adopt them as a policy in your school or your district. Take them and shape them for
Absolutely.
your particular setting. And you'll see in the book that we've taken a lot of what we have set out and put it in a set of protocols. And so here we give you opportunities to work with your PLCs or with your grade level team or with a cross school network, and think about those 7 norms and how you might document evidence of those norms, what areas you still might need to explore more in depth, and then what steps might you take as a team. So we've done that. We've as you can see, this is figure 611, so 10 preceded it. Most chapters have about 15 different ways of rethinking, reformulating, reflecting on some of the texts that we have produced.
Yes, lots of tools, lots of hands-on opportunities to apply what we're presenting. So why is this an important journey? We selected 2 possible priorities to strengthen our collaborative assessment practices and to engage multilingual learners throughout the process. But why is this an important journey for you? Why are you here tonight? Why are you listening to this webinar if you are not with us today, but maybe listening to the recording? In the chat box, please share with us very briefly. Why is this important to you to add collaborative assessment to your practices? Janice says, I need help. Well, we really...
Here we are to the rescue.
Yes, thank you. That was very sincere and very fast, so thank you. Anybody else, what you might share about why this journey is important to you? What are you seeing, Margo? Because so many answers are popping up fast. I'm trying to...
They want to highlight what students can do. How do you incorporate that into instruction and assessment after you know the students? When you have 30 students in front of you, for example. Yeah. And Chloe, she's very busy. She can't decide. There's so much she wants to do.
Yeah. You need a support network. You can't do it alone. The job is too big.
Absolutely.
Yes. That eagerness.
And we do, I'm sorry. I saw someone said, what's the research? We do interweave research along the way within each chapter. You'll see that. And we have resources for you.
All right, wonderful. So it's for the students. That's another recurring theme, Margo. It's for the students, it's for the teachers, it's supporting.
And that's the title of our book. It's for them.
Yes.
They're
All
going
right.
to be the conduits. And somebody already asked for a book talk. That would be wonderful. It'd be so much fun.
Yes, definitely. So once we know our why, now let's talk about our how. How should we prepare for collaborative assessment practices? Well, we have just a few very, very brief recommendations here. Obviously, we had about 150 pages to say about this, but let's just highlight a few important ways to prepare for this practice. We have to get to know our students very deeply, their languages, literacies, cultures, interests, and experiences. We have to consider the whole child and the whole community. We also need dedicated joint planning time. We can say that this practice can be implemented if there is no administrative or structural systemic support for it. That's just not possible. So if you don't have that in place, excuse me, then we have to advocate for that type of dedicated time and place for collaboration. And we have to co-construct and map out our goals for teaching and learning. So earlier we mentioned student agency, but let's also embrace learner agency and teacher agency. And we have tools for you to do that. We certainly have lots of summary charts, reflection tools, something like this where you see the phases of the assessment cycle that we hinted at earlier today. And each time we're going to invite you to do something with these tools. So they're not simply summarizing key ideas, but they could be very easily utilized for book studies or turned into locally adopted or adapted, whichever way you're going to look at these tools, resources for you.
All right. So what are some caveats or challenges along the way? We know it isn't always a smooth road, and we've even put in a bump in our road every once in a while. Ultimately, collaboration is relationship building. It's a humanized process. Assessment sometimes is not envisioned that way. And so we want you to have a change of mindset along the way. And realizing that not all assessment is meant to be collaborative, and you have to honor that. And the data that you get from those assessment pieces are going to also help inform decisions that are made along the way. So all data will give you some information. What I'm thinking, however, is that there's some caveats or challenges that are out of your control. And we have to recognize that. There might be a change of administration, or there's a new state mandate that comes into place, or the eternal kind of challenge of, I never have enough time, or I can't do this. If you go back, we were thinking that perhaps you want to spell out a challenge for you, so we can be aware of what's happening out there in the field, what is being challenging. But at the same time, understanding that instruction and assessment are twins, if the two are totally integrated, you're going to be able to save time. So that's my piece of advice. So say what's challenging to you right now?
So Jen said we must focus on what they can do, meaning the
Right.
students. Absolutely. And Misha mentions the unwillingness of content teachers to change. Well, resistance to change, that's a big topic. We would certainly be happy to address that another time, but lots of other challenges here. Heather mentions the challenge.
I was just going to say, she was mentioning about life students and newcomers. And so we have, I believe we introduced how to utilize multimodalities. So it doesn't have to be text-based assessment. There's so many different ways that students can show what they can do. And we're going to have a slide devoted to that in a minute, I think.
You know, the silent period came up a couple of times. I would like to say that the student is never silent. The heart is never silent. The mind is never silent. The child already has access to another linguistic system. So maybe we could move on from that designated period of the silent period and recognizing what the students can do and the multimodality, the multilingual, that multidimensional participation in learning is so important. I just had to throw that in there.
No, and I totally agree that the students need to have resources that they can utilize. And sometimes those resources are going to be in a language other than English. And
Yeah.
that's fine.
Yeah, so many very thoughtful answers, Margo. I think
Definitely.
I would like to
Time to cover the
save this.
curriculum.
I know. We'd like to save the entire chat and read through very, very closely and carefully what you had to say, because these challenges are very real. And that's why we have to collaborate to find possible pathways, not to overdo the.
No doubt about it. But also, please ask this question again in the Q&A so we can give a more thoughtful response.
Yes, absolutely. So let's continue with the next question. Okay,
so with this icon, when you travel, you have to bring suitcases, right? Especially women. Okay, I shouldn't say that. But me, I'll put the onus on me. I never know what size suitcase to pack. So you have to know where you're going, how much time you're going to be there. There's so many planning. Am I planning day by day? Am I going to plan for a whole week? And so it has to be intentional. And there has to be preparation built into the process. You can't, okay, some people might just look in their closet, take some stuff out and put it in a suitcase versus me who perseverates over what goes into my suitcase. And the other protocols that are actionable. And Andrea already showed you one. We don't want to waste your time. We want to make sure that everything we have put in this book hopefully will resonate with you. And with that, also provide some promising strategies that, of course, are evidence-based, have on our multilingual learners. And so they have chosen to be, effective for our students.
So remember your 5 Ps.
Yes. And here's a tool again that goes with them. So here we give you just one little piece of the data collection phase of assessment and what's entailed and how you might ask yourselves questions, but also questions to your grade level team. If you're working on common assessment, for example, or you're working on a project, you may want to share some of these questions with students, like what kind of evidence do you want to provide to show that you have learned this overall goal for learning or learning target? How are we going to organize these data as a class? And then my responsibility, how am I going to identify patterns of student learning so I can offer the best instruction for each and every child? And we want to make sure that that alignment is in place. So all students our opportunities are optimized through assessment and instruction.
Somebody earlier asked about research. Where is the research? Where is the evidence that what we're recommending is solid and sound? So throughout the book, you're going to find this compass rose. And each time you see that, there is a piece of evidence, a really important quote, a bite-sized approach to presenting research. This is not a research publication. I think, Margo, you have plenty. You have plenty of publications, and we have the more polished.
As you.
As I do too. So we have certainly edited volumes with lots of research chapters. This time we wanted to make sure that every recommendation that we have is backed up by research. So we're talking about evidence-based strategies for collaborative assessment practices. Classroom-based research is also honored in this book. And we have found that successful collaboration boosts students' abilities to defend their thoughts, assume multiple perspectives, and develop and grow their agency. So each of these main points and many more are well supported through research tidbits. Here is one example of that. from
Mm.
OECD, a great quote about student agency. The concept of student agency is rooted in the principle that students have the ability and the will to positively influence their own lives and the world around them. So that's what we meant by a bite-sized approach to that all the essential pieces of research are embedded in the text in a way to further support the claims and the ideas that we're making.
And of course, we have multiple citations and quite a lengthy index to help you. So what are you going to do if you have to have a pit stop? Well, take that time, sit back and relax. Take a break. We all need to do that. Take, as Andrea just said, take bite-sized tidbits or take a chapter at a time, share your insights with colleagues, exchange information, try to get those content teachers on board through your shared students. They may not be aware of the wonderful contributions of students and families. And make others, including principals and counselors and other educators who are going to be working with multiple, make them part of the conversation and engage them in the cycle.
This image, this little icon just brings such a big smile to my face. Just one more huge shout out to Claribel Gonzalez for sharing her talents with us again and again. And in this book, she created all the icons that are recurring features. So in every chapter, we have multiple pit stops. Today in this webinar, we only have one pit stop, but you will have lots of opportunities to reflect and share with others. And speaking of sharing, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and it gives you time to kind of check out the scenery. And again, take a picture of where you are and where you want to go. Go ahead, Andrea, sorry.
Since we're talking about sharing, we have a special guest appearance, a pre-recorded guest appearance by our wonderful friend, colleague, collaborator who wrote the foreword for the book, Dr. Maria Dove. And I know she's live on this webinar, but right now we have this pre-recorded segment from her.
Hi, everyone. I'd like to share something with you that I've learned in over 40 years of working in and observing pre-K through 12 classrooms. I've seen firsthand how few teachers systematically use assessment data to inform their teaching. Fewer still share their assessment practices with their colleagues. This lack of collaboration can keep students, especially multilingual learners, trapped in a cycle of underachievement. The demands of 21st century skills, critical thinking, problem solving, media literacy, and even more, require a shift in our isolated teaching practices of the past. We need a more collaborative system for planning, instruction, assessment, and reflection. One that leverages the collective expertise of all teachers that are involved in working with our English learners, multilingual learners. When teachers collaborate, they're better able to create assessments that are not only accessible and culturally responsive for all students, but they also can measure more accurately student progress in both content and language learning. A shared approach to assessment allows for a holistic view of student development, considering a broad range of factors, not just test scores and grades. Through co-assessment, teachers can design targeted interventions and support tailored instruction to individual learners' needs, especially our multilingual learners. Co-assessment is a crucial part of the collaborative instructional cycle of co-planning, co-instruction, co-assessment, and reflection, both alone and together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maria, for bringing your perspective to us and for so graciously agreeing to write the foreword to the book.
So Maria, you're on the same pathways as we are. So we're very happy that you have joined us. And you have to understand when you take a journey, you don't go from point A to point B. You always have options along the way. And we're hoping by centering multilingual learners, we're giving them choices, multimodal choices, based on their interests and their needs. And if you look here, linguistic, what kinds of texts, hopefully texts that are interest to our students, texts that use translanguaging or multiple languages, texts that are visual. That is, they have a lot of maybe embedded video or QR codes, or enable students to be kinesthetically aware, use their body language to express themselves, reenact an historical event. So they're using all their senses as a way of showing what they're learning. Graphically, you all use graphic organizers. There's just so many of them. And students have to understand what they are before they know how to use them. But they really offer insight into student learning. And audio, of course, we have podcasts, we have all kinds of, I'm thinking of books in
Digital recordings,
yeah, books on tape. So thinking about all these multimodal resources in combination, it isn't that we're forgetting about that, but each of the pathways highlights one or two of these multimodal choices for our students in combination with oral and written text. That's the important part. We're not abandoning that. We're enhancing it. And so here we keep on asking ourselves, so where are we going next? And understanding, again, we need to be part of a school community. We have to be part of a district-wide community. What's happening? I think one of the easiest things that we would suggest is to think about the current curriculum that's in place. Is there any way to enhance it through collaborative assessment? Is there any way to enhance it through linguistically and culturally more relevant resources or ways of crafting the curriculum so it's more targeted for our multilingual learners, so their voices are very much a part of what we do in school, and from school to home to community, that it embraces all those ecosystems.
And we know that there are so many multiple demands on your time, so many competing initiatives in any school or district or campus context, yet you can't do any of that without collaboration. And you also need to assess the students, the programs, how everything is done in your context. So collaboration is the way to go.
So what travel advice might we have for you? Again, don't use a solitary route. What we present, and these are 3 of the chapters in the book, is that we have to prioritize our multilingual learners, and they haven't been prioritized in assessment practices. They haven't been the beneficiaries. And so we put our multilingual learners up front in assessment as learning. And we look at student-student interaction. We look at student giving feedback to each other. We look at students as part of self-assessment and peer assessment. So as learning is a dedicated assessment approach that really highlights our multilingual learners. We know this can't be done alone, obviously. And so with assessment for learning, we bring in the teachers as guides, as mentors, as facilitators in that process. So together, students and teachers formulate goals for learning, learning targets. Teachers give very pointed, concrete, timely feedback to students, and students have an opportunity to respond. And it's conversational. It isn't a one-way. There's reciprocity in assessment for learning. And finally, assessment of learning that teachers and administrators have to deal with lots of different issues. Collaborative assessment, I think, should come up front, because unless we have the relevant, authentic data to make decisions that are going to impact our schools, then we're going to be at a loss. And so in assessment of learning, we truly want to bring teachers, colleagues together and thinking about some of the big pictures. How many projects are we going to have school-wide? How are they going to be embedded into units of learning? What kind of options are we going to offer to our students? So assessment of learning is just as critical as assessment for and as learning. So together, these three approaches create a balanced framework for collaborative assessment.
And as Margo and I both emphasized a lot, we can't do this alone. Collaboration extends beyond just teacher-to-teacher collaboration, which of course is going to be absolutely essential. But the goal is to build a learning community where students, educators, families, and administrators, all stakeholders, work together to establish the best possible pathway for multilingual learner success. So in the chat box, we're going to invite you to share some of your strategies that help build learning communities. What do you do that enhances existing partnerships? What do you do to make sure that collaboration becomes the norm? We hope to hear from many of you that collaboration is indeed the way to go.
Mm-hmm. We're having family nights. Yeah, game nights, literacy nights.
Getting to know
Having a tour of the neighborhood, a tour of the school, creating connections with libraries or other community facilities. Mm-hmm. Conferences with family members. Mm-hmm. Going over standardized data. What do those mean as well? And what can I do to augment that?
Margo, it's so beautiful. So many of the comments are about family and community engagement.
Which is wonderful. Mm-hmm.
Wonderful, yes. Thank you, Liz, for highlighting how important it is as an administrator for you to create a comprehensive schedule that allows teachers to collaborate. Absolutely.
And I'm sure the teachers are very appreciative of it too.
Yes.
And coaches, of course, you are so invaluable in this process because you are able to link all these pieces together because you are on the ground every day. Mm-hmm.
That's why we put educators rather than teachers.
Right.
So we want to recognize all subgroups of educators, teaching assistants, paraprofessionals, specialists, and so forth, as you co-construct communities in your context.
Mm-hmm. And whether they are through PLCs or through other means, teacher community as well.
Yes. So in the last chapter, you could see from the figure number, we also offer a systemic approach to highlighting the importance of relationships across assessment as for and of learning. Starting in the center with the bright orange circle, student-to-student interaction is most frequently connected to assessment as learning. Teacher-to-student interaction defines assessment for learning, and teacher-to-teacher interaction, as well as getting input from students and also from administrators and other learning community members, could be considered the hallmarks of assessment of learning. Would you like to add something else to this, Margo? Why is this so important to consider the tripart approach to assessment through the lens of
Because it's a comprehensive approach. It's inclusive of the interest groups of the major players in school. We don't want to forget that. you will see that we don't use the words formative or summative. It creates a dichotomy. It's yes or no, and we believe that this is a much more kind of relational way of thinking.
Absolutely. And it's all about being part of a team. Again, what an adorable illustration by Claribel. We just really, really loved featuring her beautiful artwork because that's what it is. You can't do it alone. We need to form a team. And when we do that, we recognize that collaborative assessment is a team sport. And we offer, again, even more examples. Here's a sample priority map, tools, protocols for you to consider. They're not exemplars. They're examples. So we want to invite you to consider something like this, a district school and classroom level map on how to establish and sustain collaboration across levels of implementation. And then please make this better. Make it your own. That ownership piece is the absolute most critical aspect of it. Use this as a springboard and then build on it, or just start from scratch and create your own systemic approach to collaborative assessment practices.
So Jamie Seisel is indeed a critical pedagogist who works in the area of classroom assessment and has done research all around the world. And we think that this captures kind of the essence of what it means for us to collaborate throughout assessment practices. So I'll read it. In essence, we need to valorize learners' multilingual language resources, address their long-term possibility of developing language assessments through collaboration with teachers and learners in linguistically diverse communities. We have to value our learners. She put that up front, just like many of you did before in the chat. We have to honor their multilingual language resources and add to that repertoire. We have to understand that assessment, especially language assessment, is critical through collaboration. How do you think about oral language assessment if it isn't dialogic? Because otherwise it isn't very meaningful. And the other recognition is that our teachers and our learners are coming from many, many different kinds of backgrounds, and we have to think about each one of those and how it's impacting their learning. And so with that, we're almost at the close. We're coming to the end of our very brief journey tonight. We want you to take this information and think about where you might plan to go with your multilingual learners down your yellow brick road, wherever it is and wherever it's going to take you. So in the chat, what possibility have you conjured up over the last 45 minutes of one thing you might do with your students to better enhance and give them more agency, have them understand that they are number one priority in teaching and learning?
And every journey begins with one step. So what is your first step? What's
Right.
next?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, lots of things are coming in. Nader really liked your idea to avoid the dichotomy of formative and summative. Love that. Libby says more time to share their voice.
Right.
Barb says dig deeper into their linguistic identities. Beautifully said. And including them. Gwen also said to include them in building assessment. So recognizing students' agency.
Increase
Ooh,
modalities. Give them those choices. Let them tell you what's their preferred mode. What are their interests? Mm-hmm.
Gwen wants to start analyzing what's happening in the district. Are we using all three, for, as, and of? Yes.
Understanding there isn't going to be a perfect balance. So where do you start and what do you build upon?
Wonderful. Thank you. So we're exactly at 7:50 in my time zone. That's we're at 6:50 for Margo. We don't know where you are or whatever time zone you are. It's that 50-minute timestamp we were given to switch over to a Q&A. So please.
And we thank you so much for coming along with us tonight.
Thank you, Andrea and Margo. Thank you so much. you had such an interactive webinar, and I've been looking through the chat, but I'm scared that I missed a few questions. So if you have something that you asked earlier or that is coming to mind, please put it in the chat here and I'll ask Margo and Andrea so they can ask it. In the meantime, I do have a question for you both. How do we do all of this if you don't have a lot of collaboration time?
I think earlier we mentioned that you have to take one step at a time. We might not be able to accomplish everything on this journey. We're not traveling around the world yet. That's our goal, to eventually travel around the world, and we will be your tour guides on that. But start taking the one most meaningful step that does not require the same amount of time as creating an entire system of support for collaboration. So one example would be using what's already established in the district. For example, the professional learning community movement is very strong in the United States and internationally too. Internationally as well. Is there already collaboration time that might not have been designated to be a collaborative assessment or collaborative planning time? But what is already in place is one step that I would recommend you take.
And I'm thinking about different modes of communication. Shoot
Yes.
someone an email. You pass somebody in the hall. Ask about your students, how they're doing in other classes. Just little things. Create a chat during lunchtime, or you're out in the hallway somehow. Be friendly.
Yeah, there was a similar question to that if you're in multiple schools, if you're serving as an itinerant teacher or as a traveling teacher, multiple schools, so using Google or other kind of Microsoft shared drives, shared files, so that your assessment practices, your tools, your protocols are shared digitally rather than sitting face-to-face with your colleagues. And another participant wanted to hear about one example of what does it really look like when we assess collaboratively?
That means that together you create, for example, criteria of success for success for your students, and you share it with the students. You don't abandon them. Assessment should never be a mystery for your multilingual learners nor any other student. But what you pool your resources, just like you do for our students, you do it together. What criteria of success are they if we have a shared goal for learning or we have a shared learning target? How do we know the students have met that? And each of us could take a modality and say, this is what it means if we create an iMovie, or this is what it means if I did a multimodal presentation, or this is what I mean if I want to write a poem and enact it. So little by little, you acquiesce and share your knowledge base as well, and you both grow together.
Yes, if you happen to be a co-teacher, then you could implement co-assessment as a way of looking at student work together. You're examining the same evidence of student learning through two lenses. If you're the English language development multilingual specialist, you're going to primarily look at language and literacy development. Your content teacher will look at content attainment. So you're going to examine the student work through two angles, and you come together and you discuss next steps for student development. And yes, we know these are all time-consuming engagements, but advocacy, bringing leadership on board, emphasizing why it is so critical for us to collaborate is something that we also recommend you do as a result of this webinar.
Your voice needs to be heard as well.
We have time for one more question if anybody has anything else.
I don't see anything else coming in the chat box right now. I try to scroll and see. Lots of thank yous. We really appreciate that you are here. And those of you who are listening to the recording, we would be happy to stay in touch with you and hear more about what you think. Thank you.
Morgan, and we hope you enjoyed it as much as Andrea and I had such a wonderful time putting together this book.
Have a good evening, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye now. Stay in touch.